with that, I'm sure. But the content appropriacy is slightly nuanced, okay? And this is really important because when you are giving feedback and you want to kind of give, you may want to give a number, you may want to say this is excellent, this is good, but you may want to give a 6 or a 3, etc. It's important to understand this. So for PT academic and PT core, um, uh, repeat sentence is 0 to 3. Okay. For PT academic, describe image, retell lecture, summarize group discussion, respond to a situation, 0 to 6. For PT core, describe image as 0 to 5. And then for PT core, respond to a situation is 0 to 3. So for me, it's pretty straightforward because, I work with this every day. And I think if you're teaching PT regularly, this will be easy to kind of credit question. And it feeds into listening and speaking. What we didn't talk about is that there are two to lecture and summarize group discussion, is that we need to kind of summarize here rather than retell the discussion. What's also really important to call out is that we really need to listen actively, or we need to get our test takers to listen actively, and note taking is essential. Okay, so I want you to have a look at your syllabus. Is there a lesson on note taking? Is there practice of this third language? Because this is crucial, and I'll explain why in a moment. Now, every question has 3 speakers. Okay, so there's 3 speakers that are part of the discussion, and there will always be a mix of genders and a mix of accents as well. It is not important to say the British man, the Australian woman. You're not going to be penalized for not. You're not going to get more points if you do. You'll hear in our example today, speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, and that is fine. Okay. And I do think that's really important to kind of communicate to test takers, particularly when they're note taking as well. Because what will uh, reduce scores is if they've said speaker 2 said something when it was actually speaker 1, because that essentially is a big problem, right? In the real world, we don't want to be confusing our neighbors who said what, because we're going to get them into trouble. So obviously it's really important to kind of be clear on who said what. And by using speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, I think that clarity can really shine through. Okay, now 2 minutes is a long time to speak, but I've done it, and I think for a native speaker and for a strong speaker of English, it is very possible to speak for 2 minutes. And actually, you really need that time to be able to really capture all the important details that were discussed in the discussion. Okay, so definitely I want you to encourage your test takers to speak for the full 2 minutes if possible. Obviously, we want it to be really coherent as well, so no repetition, but I think it is possible if you are a strong speaker of English. Okay. So again, Gaurav, you've got a question in the left. Okay. And then the next line is to do with vocabulary. And the next line is to do with coherence. Okay. So what I've done essentially is I've lifted all of these. I've lifted the description for you, and I just want to, for a 6, it says clear, accurate, and demonstrates full comprehension of the discussion, right? So has understood and clearly has taken lots of notes to be able to then summarize that discussion, and talks about the main ideas and expands on the details. Done. It's all there. Okay, but for a
Um,
scale for a score of five, it's that there are only the main idea has been clearly understood, but there are some important details missing. I'm not going to go through the rest because we don't have time, but I think that is really the key between the six and the five for task achievement. Now, the second line is around relationships, and you'll see here um, that because there are three speakers, we need to talk about whether they all agree or maybe some disagree. And these relationships are really key to point out. And I think, you know, kind of a high level looking down, top down view is really important here. For a score of six, that's done effectively, but five, there are some notes, some relationships. Um, For vocabulary, much the same. For a six, a variety of expressions are used with ease and precision. Like clearly, there's not a lot of thought going into that, the kind of choice of words. But for a five, there's a variety of expressions used appropriately, but not as masterfully, perhaps for a six. And then for a four, you can see it's sufficient to give very basic description of what the discussion was about. For coherence, much this not well connected, and we need to kind of require some effort to follow. So please answer this question, and you can pop your answers in the chat.
Three students are discussing how they study.
Hey, how do you think you did on the economics exam this morning?
It was really tough, and I didn't feel ready for it. It seemed like he tested us on everything in the textbook. What about you?
I stayed up all night studying. I was so tired by the time I got to the exam. I thought I'd fall asleep right in the middle of it.
I know what you mean. I was up all night studying too. I went to bed about 4 a.m. and had to get up at 6 to get to the exam on time.
Are you guys talking about the economics exam? I didn't think it was so bad. I was in bed by 9 p.m. last night. I think it's better to get a good night's sleep before an exam. Staying up all night just makes me more nervous, and when I'm so tired, I can't remember anything. I like to relax, watch a bit of TV, and get to bed early. I think staying up all night studying is a mistake.
Actually, I disagree. I think it's better to stay up all night and cram as much information into my head as possible the night before the exam. When I cram just before an exam, I can remember the information in the short term. That way I can do well on the exam. But, unfortunately, I forget it all the moment I leave the exam room.
I actually think it's important to learn the material, not just try to remember it for the exam. So I don't usually stay up all night to cram for an exam. Usually I spend some time each day going over my notes, and I try to keep up with the material so I don't feel so nervous and upset when the exams come around. I usually do pretty well on my exams, and I sort of enjoy them. But I was so busy with an essay I had to write, I forgot about this one, and I ended up having to study all night. I bet I don't get a great mark on this exam.
Well, I read a study that said university students who get a good night's sleep before their exams, in general, do better than students who stay up all night cramming. So I think it's more important to sleep than to cram.
I read that study too, but they also said that it wasn't enough for students to simply get a good night's sleep the night before the test. The study found that students who got enough sleep every night got better grades. Anyway, I have a system for cramming. I make a list of the most important topics and I review that information. Plus, I often review exams from past terms. That's really helpful. Most professors make up new exam questions each term, so the university has past papers online, and sometimes even the answers. That way, I get an idea of the layout of the exam, as well as what the professor thinks is important.
Okay. So folks, just to be clear, in the exam, test takers don't see this script, right? I'm just doing it because I want to make sure that it's clear for you um, when we kind of analyze it a little bit in more detail. So, to answer those questions, speaker one, yes, stayed up all night. Okay. So cramming, I'm hoping if for those of you who haven't come across this word, it will be clear from the context. But essentially, it's studying hard, a short, studying hard or studying intensively, a short time before the exam. I think we've all done it, right? So speaker one, yes, stayed up all night. Speaker two, yes, stayed up all night, but doesn't usually cram. And speaker two, no, went to bed early. Okay. So can you see that that is the main idea? All right. Um, do all three speakers think that cramming is good practice? Well, speaker one, yes, believes cramming works in the short term. Speaker two, no, actually prefers, steady studying. And speaker three, no, believes sleep is really crucial. So again, I think that is a second kind of main idea, a theme that was running through, and noting those kind of difference relationships is really important. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is to listen to the response from a test taker, and I'd like you to give a score for content, pronunciation, and oral fluency. And again, feel free to share that in the chat.
Three students discussed their study habits for a recent economics exam. Both the male students stayed up all night cramming, which left them exhausted and unprepared. The female student, however, went to bed early and felt the exam was manageable, believing that a good night's sleep is more effective than cramming. The first male student argues that cramming helps him retain information short term, while the second male student usually prefers consistent daily study to truly learn the material and avoid stress, though he had to cram this time. The female student cites a study showing that students who sleep well before exams generally perform better. The first male student adds that consistent sleep is key to better grades overall and shares his cramming strategy of reviewing important topics and past exam papers. In summary, the female student prioritizes sleep, the first male student relies on cramming, and the second male student prefers consistent study but had to cram this time. They all recognize that preparation methods impact exam performance.
Great. Okay. So I'm kind of curious to see what you have put. So feel free to pop in it's Tarampri, an excellent summary, yeah. But can you give me a score? What would you say? So remember, pronunciation and oral fluency is out of 5 for summarized group discussion. Um, but for content, it's out of 6. So well done, Aisha. Excellent. I'm particularly pleased that you've given the maximum score effectively. So out of 6, out of 5, out of 5. Interesting. Um, it's actually 2 minutes, Seizure, okay, for the summarized group discussion. Yeah. Um, okay, really interesting. So, okay, so look, I haven't this is just my personal reflection on this. Yeah, this is my score and this is what I would give it. Yeah, this is not a Pearson score by any means. Um, but for me, um, I'm just going to um go back actually. Yeah, let me go back to this one. Actually, I'm going to say 6 for oral fluent. Sorry, confusing now. 5 out of 5 for oral fluency, 5 out of 5 for pronunciation, and 5 out of 6 for content. Okay, so let me just repeat that again. I'm going backwards. So 5 out of 5 for oral fluency, 5 out of 5 for pronunciation, and 5 out of 6 for content. So look, as I said, this is my reflection, okay, and it just shows that it is very subjective, okay. I think we need to be as fair as possible, and I think we need to have a look at why I've chosen 5 out of 6 for content and not 4 and not 6, okay. So I think someone pointed it out that all the kind of the main ideas were mentioned here. Um, but I would like you to tell me what is kind of missing for a 6. Okay. So let's just play it again, and I'd like you to follow it, look at my highlighted bits, and tell me what is missing.
3 students discussed their study habits for a recent economics exam. Both the male students stayed up all night cramming, which left them exhausted and unprepared. The female student, however, went to bed early and felt the exam was manageable, believing that a good night's sleep is more effective than cramming. The first male student argues that cramming helps him retain information short term, while the second male student usually prefers consistent daily study to truly learn the material and avoid stress, though he had to cram this time. The female student cites a study showing that students who sleep well before exams generally perform better. The first male student adds that consistent sleep is key to better grades overall and shares his cramming strategy of reviewing important topics and past exam papers. In summary, the female student prioritizes sleep, the first male student relies on cramming, and the second male student prefers consistent study but had to cram this time. They all recognize that preparation methods impact exam performance.
Okay, good. So I think there are a couple of things. I mean, I hope what I really loved about her summary was that it was extremely logical, and I hope you were able to kind of follow it. And I also thought there was some really good paraphrasing. I'll just give one example, but you'll see it says in the discussion, "So tired," and I think the test taker used like um exhausted, right, in her response. So there's lots of good use of paraphrasing. Um, but I'll tell you why I gave a 5. So I think essentially it's just the finer details. There are some missing. Um, and I think it's around, and I think it's really important to give this person really explicit feedback. Um, eh, First of all, there could have been more expansion on the female speaker who gets very nervous and tired and forgets all the information if she stays up all night. So that's why she prioritizes sleep. And also, it wasn't clear from the summary why that speaker 2 had to cram this time, because he doesn't usually take that approach, right? So why was this time slightly different? I also thought that, paraphrasing was good, but there was a lot of repetition of cramming. And we talked about cramming being studying intensively, studying